During our last session, we discussed about the growth and the requirements of data center over all areas. In this session, we will discuss about the challenges and the similarities the data center is facing all over the globe. John, what are the challenges you foresee for the data centers in Middle East and Africa, or for that matter globally, in recent years?
One of the main challenges we see is a specialist resource, the people. We recruit across Europe, Middle East and India, and it's finding the right people. Unfortunately, we've been able to find the right people with the right expertise. But globally, and this has been reported by Google and Microsoft, there's a shortage of the right expertise with the right skills for data center market. So we provide training for people, and we actually bring on graduates as a company who maybe had a building services background, and we then give them the skills within the data center industry. Fortunately, some of our really good people that we've got have come through the graduate program that we do at Sudlows. There are other organizations such as Infrastructure Masons, who are a sort of global body who are concerned with the data center industry as a whole, and they provide scholarships and investment into training and skills shortage to make sure that we have enough of the people for the future generation of data centers. And as we mentioned, we're in the fourth industrial revolution now, which is characterized generally by the fusion of digital, biological, physical worlds, as well as growing utilization of new technologies such as AI, cloud computing, robotics, 3D printing, and IoT. So we need new engineers, young imaginative minds to join and drive this new revolution.
Yeah, obviously, when we are talking about this fourth industrial revolution, basically the skill set required are changing. The traditional skill sets are not sufficient. We need to have the workforce who is able to understand the challenges of future and update and adapt themselves accordingly. I was again going through the articles and studying the things through. The data has been published that the PUEs in last couple of years, instead of reducing, it has increased. The Uptime has published an article where traditionally the PUE from 2006 has brought down from 2.5 to the level of 1.1 or 1.2, and then as an average the PUE for data centers works out to be in the range of about 1.5. However, in 2019 the average data center PUE has been seen as 1.68. The Uptime website clearly notifies that. And when we evaluate it further, the key parameters which came out, which are against sustainability, is for data centers, number one is reliability comes into picture over sustainability. One mishap can wipe off all the savings which you are talking about as sustainable. So in that aspects, the operators are more safe, or tend to be more safe over little energy. But that's not the only solution. It is observed that the global warming, the whole temperatures of the world are on a higher side, and obviously when the climatic conditions are on a higher side, the consumption of the air conditioning will be on a higher side. As we mentioned earlier, the data centers are not working at optimal efficiencies of the requirement, so accordingly the power consumption goes on a little higher side. It's not at optimal. And third aspect was the layouts, which have been designed probably a few years back and then they are operational now, so that effectiveness little bit comes down. So as we need to move further, we need to address all these aspects where without compromising the effectiveness or the redundancy part of it, without taking any risk, how can we reduce the power consumption and the energy usage to make it more effective. Taking further, John, what are the common aspects in India with these markets? We have discussed the differences. What are the common areas?
Some of the common areas are mainly around the challenges, which I think both in Europe, USA, actually globally we're seeing in the data center market. And that's a shortage of skilled engineers working in the data center space. Now, with the global demand for data centers increasing due to the pandemic, more people working from home, more reliance of online services, people not going out, watching Netflix, YouTube, having entertainment at home rather than outside, this is only fueling a greater demand for data centers. It was recently reported by Microsoft that in the space of 2 months during the COVID pandemic, the world has digitized what it would normally have taken 2 years.
Oh.
And that's, yeah, so that's a factor of companies who may have been not fully online, with people who are not familiar with IT. They're forced into it. Schools that don't have online platforms, the school's shut. If the school's going to stay operating, teachers need to be able to teach the kids online via different platforms. So this has pushed the whole world in a digital sense, which again, reliance is through the data center. When it first hit the pandemic, I started to get dropouts on my internet at home here. Mobile phone calls used to drop out, which 6 months ago, never had any problem. So that's just all the additional bandwidth going through the networks, the data centers, which means they're going to have to upgrade, spend that money to keep the maintenance up, because I think a lot of companies were used to the facility operating at 50-60%. They've got that buffer there. But now facilities are operating at 80-90, not just from a MEP, but from a network perspective as well. And that's when you start to see the few cracks, the few call dropouts, Netflix going from 4K streaming down to standard definition. Actually, we had many buffering issues. Some nights I wouldn't even work Netflix on TV via the internet. So when you're stuck at home, that was a saving grace. You could watch an episode or two of your favorite show. So it was very frustrating at times.
Yeah. The other aspects which we understand is, one is for sure from the operator perspective or from the data center operator perspective, energy is one key area. As you rightly mentioned, getting the key and qualified manpower and retaining them is the second aspect. Third area of concern is availability of the key components. In case of downtime, particularly in terms of COVID, which has posted a question mark with a lot of data center operators that in case of lockdowns, in terms of restricted movements, in case if the key component fails, which has a huge impact on the whole economics as well as the operations of the data center, how it will be sorted out. So when the survey was taken, one of the key aspects which was notified by data center operators was availability of the key components and the vicinity of these components in the nearby area.
So I think the critical spares is an important part of the data center operation. Now, at the end of a project, as a consultant, we will always recommend with the OEM what are the critical spares, what's most likely to fail. Now, there's normally a long shopping list of essential and recommended items, but day one of a project is an additional cost. And I'm sure there's a lot of data center operators who, during this pandemic where there's a shortage of components, the specialist engineers are also not able to travel, that they'd taken that critical spare list at the beginning and they had that alternator, that ACB sat in a room somewhere for insurance purposes. So that's why it's important that although equipment is very robust nowadays, we don't see so many failures in equipment because it's thoroughly tested in factory acceptance testing, thoroughly tested on site. The manufacturers have been making these types of chillers, breakers, UPS for a number of years and they're proven, but there's still the chance that there might be a failure, and it will be when you least need it.
One more aspect I would like to add is the maintenance. If you look at Europe as well as even to GCC part, there is enough money which is spent on the maintenance. It is understood that it's a key component where if you want to have a longer duration and better efficiency, we need to spend for the maintenance. Some of that aspect lags in India for spending on maintenance. Now that poses further challenges in whole operation of data centers. So I believe now as we are going to technological area and we are talking fourth industrial revolution where digitization is key. So Indian operators and data center operators will take into consideration this key aspect of routine and regular maintenance where in long term they will be benefited.
Yeah, I think it's Data centers, unlike most other buildings, operate 24/7. Big power, big cooling demands. So really testing systems day to day. There isn't any time to do maintenance, and that's why we design concurrently maintainable systems so that any component within the data center power or cooling infrastructure can be isolated, taken out for either short maintenance or completely replaced without affecting the servers downstream of it. It is really important part of the data center to have that maintenance, to carry out it in line with the manufacturer's recommended frequency and steps, but also to do preventative maintenance. Having a proactive maintenance team who will take additional steps in identifying faults before they happen. Let's not wait for things to break and then fix it. I use the analogy of the typical truck drivers here who they will drive the truck until the tyre blows up, instead of changing the tyre when it's due after it's had its service life. They will keep going, and that's why we see a lot of debris on the road, and we can't have that happening with data centers.
For sure. Now, even apart from data centers, the aspect of maintenance has taken development phase in a few years. Earlier we were talking about the regular or routine maintenance, then it came to a level of the preventive maintenance. Now we are talking about predictive maintenance. So basically we have enough data, we can see the variation in the data of the operation of equipment, of power consumption, and these variations are picked up by the operators or the maintenance team, and it is corrected then and there itself. So that predictive maintenance is also going to play a big role in data centers in near future.
Yes, I think the advance of AI covers a wide range of industries, not just medical, but within a data center industry itself. So there are companies now doing AI cooling systems. So the cooling system will automatically adjust its set parameters based on the outside conditions, but also the inside conditions. How much is my load inside? Is it critical load? Can we increase temperatures? Is the environment stable? Is it occupied at 20, 30, 40%? But that can be fed in, as you rightly said, Sajal, to the maintenance, especially for large co-location companies who have over 10 data centers. They've been operating them for 10 years. They've got all the different types of equipment in their sites. They could be plugging in this information into an AI platform which could, with some degree of accuracy, predict when they're going to potentially have a failure with an alternator, a UPS, a chiller, putting them a little step ahead of that potential failure so that they can carry out the necessary maintenance in advance, keeping their availability and uptime at 100% for their customers.
Okay, all in all, we can see there is a big requirement of data centers. The data centers in India will be having a much higher demand than the supply, and as John rightly mentioned, for the next 4 to 5 years, the demand will be more than the supply. So the lot of operators are trying to catch up. There are large amount of investments are coming up. Lot of mega projects are getting launched in India for the data centers. In the whole scenario, the key aspect is maintaining quality. Maintaining quality in the design, in the execution, in the maintenance, and quality manpower. So not only for the growth, for the survival, it's key to have the quality being delivered. Along with the quality, when we talk about the sustainability goes in hand, but here we are talking about reliability and also another key aspect. So with that, we would like to conclude on the whole topic of data center as such for the whole market. I would like to thank you, John, for taking out his time and sharing his inputs about whole data centers in the whole market. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Sajal. It's been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.